welcome. Today we want to talk about something you should all know.
Yes.
You need a LinkedIn page.
Absolutely.
Right? Everyone.
Any job seeker on the planet.
Yes.
Or anybody who's working.
Right. It's a great way to build your network for clients, to promote your business. If you're self-employed, absolutely. And if you're looking for a job, of course.
Yes.
But what makes you stand out on LinkedIn, particularly if you're returning to work after a career break and maybe don't have as much exciting stuff, or you don't think you have as much exciting stuff to promote?
And that is the key, because we get this question all the time from our students. It's, I had a career break. How am I going to hold, some kind of weight in that world? So you can and you will. And so the first place is sort of a simple place to start. And that is just with an eye-catching, unique banner, right?
So the banner is the very top. It's a long rectangle at the top of the page. If you don't create an image, LinkedIn will put an image on there. So I mean, it used to be a constellation. Now it's shades of gray. It'll probably change again. But you don't want that, because you want someone to get on your page and just immediately be drawn into it. And the best way to do that was with a good image.
Well, and it's your first opportunity to just sort of set a vibe of here is who I am. Here's the essence of me, to do that. So there's a number of different resources you can use to do that.
Well, I think what most people do, what I see a lot is some kind of like a sunset or a mountain scene. And that's perfectly fine. That's much better than the standard offering.
Right.
But you can step it up a notch by making that banner reflect what you do, or the kind of worker you are. Exactly. So, for example, we've seen students who, like, I'm thinking of Lindsay, who's a project manager, and she has a custom image that she found on Canva, I think, of just like lots of different points being connected to each other by lines, because that's what she does. I remember Flora's a creative person in the advertising industry, so she had a banner that just showed lots of ideas and little bubbles. So if you're
a copywriter, I think there's like books have been
or a typewriter for somebody who's a writer. You should not invest in creating a custom banner unless that's your job. So if you're a graphic designer or an art director, then you might want to invest in creating your own. But as you mentioned, Canva. I've done some of the Google search and just take a screenshot. If you want to invest a little money, you can buy an image from like a Shutterstock or one of those photo sites. I mean, we're talking dollars, not a lot.
Yes.
But then putting it in that banner so that's the first thing I see, because it also shows a certain level of creativity and a certain level of tech savvy to not just take the basic template that LinkedIn gives you.
Yes. Yeah. And so the next place we go to is that image of yourself. This can be a real hurdle for some of our students to get over. You have to have a picture of yourself.
Yes.
On LinkedIn.
There's I think it's like 20 times more views if you have a photo. I know for me personally, it's just an anecdote, but if someone tries to connect with me and they don't have a photo, I won't connect with them.
Right.
I mean, it's just like a basic. So first of all, it should be a current photo.
Yes.
I'm not going to put a photo of when I'm 40 because that was 20 years ago, right? So you want to put something that when I meet you looks like you. So don't go do a glamour shot.
Right.
Up yourself a little bit. I basically usually advise our students to look like you would look for an interview. I mean, clean hair, maybe a little bit of makeup if that's what you normally wear. And it should be just neck up of you alone. So we see a lot of these, and then I cut Kelly out, and that's just weird. Not that.
This is not the platform for that.
Exactly. And in clothing, nothing fancy, not a lot of pattern. What you want to draw attention to is a smiling face that looks like someone that I want to work with.
Right.
Basically.
And your background, you want to make sure that it's neutral or something. Oftentimes our students will even take it outside against the trees or something like that, so that it gives you good light. That's number one, especially if you take a picture outdoors. But two, it also just neutralizes.
It kind of frames it.
Yeah, the background.
Now, I mean, I don't usually have the newest phone. I actually have a newer phone now. But most of the phones now have a portrait mode.
Yep.
And that will just kind of slightly blur out your background and let your image pop. Right. So don't spend a lot of time in this, but make sure that you get it done, because it's important.
And don't let this be the roadblock that keeps you from getting your LinkedIn profile out there. Take the picture. You can always change it over time. But we have on good authority that this will be something that keeps people stuck and not really connecting and using the platform to its fullest. So don't spend a ton of time there. Okay, number 3, show what you do through clear job titles. Talk about that.
So I see a lot of people, I don't know who's giving them advice, that under their name, the job title says something I help people build the best programs with authority and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that is not a job title.
Right.
And I don't really know anything about what you do. And it's usually, that's probably even more specific. Most of them are really vague. So what you need to understand is that job title, that section of your LinkedIn profile is the primary driver of recruiters to your page. So if Kelly and I say we're looking for a PR manager and we go into LinkedIn, we're only going to be sent people who have PR manager in that job title. So you're actually shooting yourself in the foot if you don't have that information there. So it should be clear job titles that are recognizable by someone who's reading it or by somebody who's using the LinkedIn program to find you.
Right. And how you separate it too. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Right?
So they should be separated by a space and a vertical line and another space before the next one. Otherwise, if there's slashes or commas, the algorithm doesn't always read them well.
And the vertical line she's talking about can be found on your keyboard above the return on Apples, and I think it's right above delete
on a PC.
The next one is to turn it on, the open to worker.
When you go into on that first panel where it's got all of your personal information, I think it's on the lower left, but it moves around. So all you need to do is make sure that you are selecting. There are two options. One says, I want my LinkedIn profile to be open to recruiters only.
Yeah.
And the other is I want my LinkedIn profile to be open to all LinkedIn members. Now, when you choose that second option, that's when you get that little green swish that says open to work. I know it's not the best color. People don't like it, but you want people to know. If you're looking for a job, you want people to know.
Absolutely.
And the problem with choosing only recruiters is that ideally you want more than just recruiters to know you're looking. Recruiters aren't the ones who hire you. They may even be the person who gives you the offer, but the person making that decision is the hiring manager or the chief executive.
Yeah.
You want them to find you too. Yeah. So check that. All LinkedIn members, always. The only caveat would be if you're currently employed and you know your employer's on LinkedIn, you probably don't want the green swish by your name.
Yes.
So that would be...
Okay, so this next one is really important because this is really how you show who you are.
Yes.
You teach people who you are when they come to your page. So you want to really use this piece of real estate well, and that is the about section. So talk about that.
So the about section is similar to the profile statement at the top of a resume, but it's conversational. So you're telling me, the reader, what you do, what you can do, what you have done in narrative form. So you should really put some time into this. Invest in having somebody edit it, not professionally, but a friend. Reading it out loud can help you kind of find that conversational cadence that you want here. But it should answer these basic questions. What do I do?
Yeah.
Where, meaning like in what industries do I do it or have I done it? For whom? What kinds of clients or what kinds of employees have I done it for? And how do I do it? And these are important questions to answer. It's not just a list of where you worked. That's the experience section that comes later. This is the section that tells me about you. I should be able to feel your personality come through. This is the part that should really be your biggest investment of time.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. And you don't want it to be super long and go on and on and on forever and talk about every detail in your life. You want it to be interesting, to the point.
And enough so that I want to know more. That said, I think there's space for 2,000 characters there. When you're given a field that big, it's kind of like when you're doing an application. If you're given 2,000 characters and you're only using 40, they're expecting you to write. So it's expected that you're going to write something longer. A couple of ways to make it easier on the eyes is just to include a lot of white space.
Good point.
Just so that I'm not reading. If I see something this long and it's all text, I'm not going to read it, but I can see something this long.
Right.
And if there's lots of white space, I'll be able to skim it and read it more easily.
I just want to point this out because this is a trap that we see a lot of our students fall into, where they do a lot of trying to explain that gap and talk about their children and go into depth about, that time and we caution them, right? So you want to speak a little bit about that? Yeah.
So the next section is the experience section, where you have the option of selecting career break, which is an offering on LinkedIn, or just filling that space with those things that you've done, whether it be leadership in the community, part-time work, gig work, kind of covering it. Our preference is generally that you do that as opposed to saying, I took a career break.
Right.
The reason is more just perception. If I'm reading a LinkedIn profile and I see career break, I'm just going to okay, well, she hasn't worked in a while. But if I see a list of work that you've done, and remember, work is work, whether it's paid or unpaid, then I'm going to read it. I'm going to get a little more, and I might be a little bit more engaged with the page. But in that about section where you're talking a little bit, sometimes people talk a lot about what they've done for their children and for their spouses and whatever. No, you're talking about what you did. Now, you might talk about your leadership role in the public school system. Yep. You might talk about how you started a nonprofit for children with autism to support your own child and others.
Absolutely.
But what you're focused on is not your child, your spouse, or
telling them things that they haven't earned the right to hear.
That's right.
Right? Yep. You know, it's how is this going to be valuable work that you have done, and how are you leveraging it and showcasing it?
Focus really is on the work that you've done, not the problem or the dependent that created that need. And then a good about section will end with a call to action too.
Right. Yep.
It'll say something like, I would love to meet with you to talk about how I can help your organization become more efficient. Right. Let's talk, and then put an email address or a phone number, however you like to communicate with people. Really important that you're focusing on what you've done, what you've accomplished, and not feeling any sense of embarrassment or guilt that it might not be the high level work that you might have done 12 years ago.
Right. And so you already talked about just presenting your experience, but I think just like it is on your resume, because this is where those two worlds are connected with each other. You want to make sure it flows the same way.
Yeah. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because very often we will hear people say, well, I'm going to do custom resumes. I'm going to have 5 different resumes for different types of positions. But the problem is you can only at any given time have one LinkedIn. So your resume and your LinkedIn have to sync. Where you can deviate is in a cover letter to draw my attention, or maybe give me a little more detail on a particular job that might be more relevant to that position I'm applying for. But the LinkedIn is one place. You can't have a resume for product manager, HR director, and graphic designer. That just doesn't work. So pick a lane, create that resume and that LinkedIn that are synced and similar, not verbatim, but similar.
Right. Okay, and the last one is to stay active on the platform. You don't want to spend all this time creating this page that is unique and interesting and all of the things that we've just discussed, and then never go back there, or not really get out there and use the platform. This platform is so robust.
It is, and it's really getting more so as it evolves. If you connect a lot, some people feel like, I'm active because I have 500 connections. Right. And that's great. You want to have that kind of critical mass. But it's how are you engaging with those connections? So you want to, at least once a week, do something, post something, write a comment on someone else's post. Right. You can like something if that's all you have time to do, but a like with even a short, pithy comment is better. It's going to drive more reads to your page and more visits to your page. If you are a subject matter expert and you can write, at some point you might want to write your own LinkedIn article. And that's really easy to do on the platform. The easiest thing to do is type in, how do I write an article? But if you look around, you'll see a little prompt that says, would you like to write an article? And you click on it. It's so easy. Again, that's something you would do only if you really have subject matter expertise and can write well. But lots of intermediate ways to stay connected. Because when I start posting things, Kelly starts seeing me on her feed, and I'm remembered. We've had so many students tell us that someone found them based on a post that they wrote or post they commented on.
Months before.
And then they just go look at their page. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to drive people to your page.
Yes. So a unique feature that we have added to our YouTube page is the playlists option. And there is an entire playlist that is all based on any video that we've created around LinkedIn. So you might want to check that out.
It's a good idea.
We also have a stopgap course that we call the LinkedIn Lab. And that's something that if you really want somebody to hold your hand and give you step-by-step instructions on how to create your LinkedIn page and also then use it so that you can network.
Yes.
That is a great option for you. And you can find that at www.preparetolaunchu, the letter U.com. If you like what you heard today, you can like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We put out new content every Monday, and we love our audience.